Well, hello folks, welcome to our next video in our series on Introduction to Programming, following our Grok Learning online course using Python, Introduction to Programming using Python. This time we're going to be following Module 3, which is all about making decisions. So how can we make our programs make choices? And if you ever want to be able to write any sort of more complex sort of program, you need to understand how to write code that makes decisions. So a decision, we make them all the time. We can represent them using diagrams like this one, which is a flowchart. So it's just representing a choice perhaps somebody might make in the morning when they're getting ready to leave the house to go to school or work. They might look outside and think, oh, well, is it raining? To determine how they're going to get to work that day or school that day. If it's raining, if that is true, the answer is yes, they might take one option. If the answer is false, the answer is no, then they might take a different option. In programming, we call these control structures. Control structures are things we use to determine the flow of our program, and one of those is used to make decisions. The most basic of those control structures is the if statement. So a simple if statement might start with a line of code similar to this, which we've seen in previous modules, where we've got a variable called raining, and we're asking the user for a question, asking them for some input, and the question we're asking is it raining today, yes or no? We want trying to prompt the user to give us an answer of yes or no. And the question we might then ask for our program is, well, if the user gives me the value of yes for the variable of raining, and that's true, then I might provide the output, you should take the bus to work. If they give me an answer of no at that input, then I might provide some different output. Okay, so I'm asking two separate questions there. Each one of those questions has what's called a condition. The thing that comes after the if statement is the condition. Notice the syntax there, it always ends in the colon, that's important. And conditions always evaluate to either true or false. They're always yes or no questions. They're always either true or false. If it's true, then we perform an action. If the condition is false, then we move down to the next line. And in this case, that's asking another question. We're also seeing this operator here with the double equals. What that means is, as opposed to the equal sign used on the top line, which is taking a value and putting it inside of a variable, if we want to compare and take a look inside that variable bucket and see what's there, then that's a comparison, and we use the double equals as a comparison operator to do that. So it doesn't change the variable, it's just looking inside to see what it currently is. If I've got a scenario where I've got an action I want to perform where the condition is true, and I want to do something different where the condition is false, then I can use what's called the if-else statement to do that, where I've got two options, one where it's true, one where the condition is false. So for example, if I've got the variable name and I'm asking the user for input, and the question I'm asking is who goes there, and I'm saying if the name the user provides me is Frodo, then I want to print a message, welcome, we're expecting you. But what if they give me anything else other than Frodo? Well, I can use an else command to represent that. Notice the else command has no condition, because this is just what's going to happen if the condition in the if statement is false. The user's given me any name other than Frodo. Then I want to print a different message in that case. So I can have one action to run where the condition is true, another action to run where the condition is false. Also note the indentation here in our if statement, so that's really important. Our actions are indented underneath the if statement or the else statement. That's an important way to represent our code for readability, and you'll find that if you don't do that appropriately, your solutions will be marked incorrectly in your Grok Learning course. So we've seen one of those operators, the double equal sign, the comparison operator, which quite literally means, is it the same as? But there are others that we can use depending on what we're trying to compare. The not equal to is an exclamation mark equals. We've got less than and greater than as our normal symbols you'd be used to. If we add an equals sign to each one of those, we get less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And we can use those operators to form our conditions for our if statements. We can also make decisions using numbers. So here we've got a scenario where we've got a variable called age, and we're asking the user for input, and we're asking what is your age. Because we're asking them to put in a number, and we want that to be treated as a numeric variable, we're using the int special operator that we've seen in a previous module. So we're asking the question, well, if the age they gave us was greater than or equal to 18, then I might output a value, you are old enough to vote. Else, if the value they gave me was not greater than or equal to 18, so in other words, if that condition is false, then I would output a different message. So here, if the user enters a value of 14 when they're prompted by the input box, what will the output be? And yep, if you are thinking that it's going to be the else action, you need to be 18 or over to vote, then that's correct, because the condition is false. So we can also put if statements inside other if statements. We call that nesting, where you have one if statement inside of another one. So for instance, if I've got the value of x is equal to true, and I'm asking the question if x is less than or equal to true, less than or equal to 3, and I'm printing a message if that's the case, if that is true. And then before I get to any sort of else action, I can ask another question. Notice it's indented inside the previous one, so that's how I can know that that's a nested if statement. So then I'm saying, well, what if x is greater than or equal to 3? And if that's true, I'm providing some output. In this scenario, looking at that code and the value of x, which of those two statements do you think will run? And which statement will make both of them run? So if you're thinking about those answers then, and you're realizing that the first statement will run if the first statement will run currently, okay, x is less than or equal to 3, that's correct. The second statement will not run. But if I change the value of x and make it 3, then you can see that both of those conditions actually evaluate to true, and I would see both of those messages. So that's an example of a nested if statement. But what if we've got more options than 2? And how can I deal with those? Where I've got more than just an if and an else. Well, I can use some code like this to do that. So if I've got a variable value of x again, and I'm giving that variable value 5, I can ask if x is less than 3 and provide some output when that's true. I can use an else if command, which we shorten to elif in Python. That's actually short for else if. Other languages use that, but Python uses elif. And it also has another condition. And I can say, well, what if x is the same as 3? So elif commands also must have conditions. Else commands are the only ones that do not require conditions. Ifs and elifs do. So if that one's true, evaluates to true, then I've got some output to print. And if both of those are false, if x is not less than 3 and x is not equal to 3, then my else action will print, and that will be the output of my program. So in this scenario, which action do you think is going to actually run when x is equal to 5? If you're thinking the else action at the bottom, then you would be correct, because the first two conditions evaluate to false, which means my else action is the one that must run. So that is a quick overview of basic if statements using if and else and elif. Now you've got everything you need to go and do the first 4 problems of Module 3.